I'm Debbie Cooper, your worship leader on this Sunday, along with Laura Phelan-Shane, Elizabeth Harrington, and technical coordinator Anna Bressers. One quick adjustment to the order of service. The Time for All Ages is now a two-parter. Laura and her daughter will be reading a story, and then Elizabeth has something special for us. Now, we're glad you can all be here for this time of reflection and spiritual connection at the Humboldt Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, an open-minded, open-hearted spiritual home to everyone who values acceptance for all people and care for life on earth. One expression of such care is to humbly acknowledge that the fellowship grounds are located on unceded ancestral lands of the Wiyot people. Over 10,000 years, Indigenous peoples lived sustainably on the lands that we now inhabit. As members of this fellowship, we are learning how to live with the truth that their treatment then and to this day, and how to honor the wisdom of their traditional practices and continuing perspectives. As part of this, fellowship members approved what's called an honor tax as one small way to turn our words into actions that make substantive difference in the lives of Native people. We will also continue to acknowledge that we dwell on their unceded lands and offer gratitude for their wise stewardship of this portion of Mother Earth. And with this as context, Laura will now call us further into a spirit of reverence with the chalice lighting and aspiration.
Good morning, everyone. Let us begin by opening sacred space as we light the chalice with a poem by Jan Yolin. Okay. Read to Me by Jane Yolen. Read to me riddles, read to me rhymes. Read to me stories of magical times. Read to me tales about castles and kings. Read to me stories of fabulous things. Read to me pirates and read to me knights. Read to me dragons and dragon book fights. Read to me spaceships and cowboys, and then, when you are finished, please read them again. Now, let us renew our commitment as we say together the words of our aspiration. They are on your order of service and on the Zoom slide. May love be the spirit of this fellowship. May the quest for truth be its sacrament, and service be its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration.
Good morning. Good to see you all. So I have one child who has said she's not interested in coming up. I wonder, Max and Penny, do you want to join me, or should we just look at the pictures from here? It's up to you. Yeah? You're welcome to come or not. Okay, I'll just share the picture so everyone can see. You want to sit here? Perfect. Okay. So the first thing I would love to do, just to be in the spirit of fellowship and community and connection, is just to invite you very quickly, about 30 seconds or so, turn to the person next to you and share with them one of your favorite childhood storybooks. So go. Try to make sure everyone gets a chance to share a book. Okay, I've opened up a whole can of worms here. We could. This is my kind of crowd. If you can talk about books for way longer than you're supposed to, then I have found my people. So this is one of the books that I liked to read. When I was pregnant with my daughter, who's now 10, I bought no clothes for her. I bought no toys, nothing practical whatsoever, but I bought books, tons, and we had the most well-stocked library by the time she came into this world. And so this is one of the ones that she has recently told me she's no longer interested in. And so now it lives here in our care building. So yes, Darcy, do I need to be? I will, absolutely. And I'll be as succinct and clear as I can. So you bet. So the name of this book is Pete and Pickles by Berkeley Breathed. You'll hear their names again. Pete was a perfectly predictable pig. He was also a perfectly practical pig and a perfectly uncomplicated pig. Being all those perfect things, Pete might have run for the hills if he had known what was coming that night. Do you see what he's vacuuming? Is he literally vacuuming the dirt? He's that organized. The storm arrived first. Pete cut the evening's fun off early and went to bed to get the nightmare out of the way. The same terrifying, watery nightmare all pigs dream during stormy nights. For pigs are known for doing only one thing well in water: drowning. And that is exactly what Pete dreamt he was doing when a sudden sound awoke him. The window was open. Pete pulled the lamp switch. Nothing happened. He had an odd feeling, pigs are very smart in this way, that something was a little wrong. Do you see anything off in that room, Max? Maybe a little bit mud. Pete was suddenly grabbed, hugged really, by a wet nose, at the other end of which was a wet elephant. The beast whispered, "Shh." She said nothing else, but her eyes spoke clearly. "Help me." There was a knock at the door. A clown asked Pete if he'd seen any sign of an escaped elephant named Pickles. "There, under the couch, look carefully," Pete said. As the circus man led the sad, slumping elephant away, Pete was startled when she looked back at him and smiled. The next morning, Pete was disinfecting his house when he noticed his midnight visitor had left behind a gift: dandelions. It's ridiculous, thought Pete as he scrubbed. That afternoon, Pete took his usual short stroll. He looked down at the evening mist rolling in and saw a circus tent. He looked at the dandelion. "Ridiculous," he muttered. Today, however, Pete would take a longer walk. He soon found himself amidst the circus tents, watching a long nose plucking every dandelion within reach. Pete knew that nose, and it knew him. It plucked Pete's hat and disappeared. Seconds before Pete called the police, his hat was pushed back out. Improved. You see the dandelions he got. Pete looked in to see Pickles sitting in a very dark corner of a very dark tent, wearing a very locked chain. Pete suddenly, unexplainably, found himself reaching for the key. Now free and outside, Pickles dove to hide while a panicked Pete whispered, Tea was on my schedule today, not elephants." Being a practical pig, however, he knew they needed a disguise, something, anything. Pete thought fast. It worked too well. A policeman suggested dinner. They reached Pete's house by nightfall. A weary Pickles, retired after making herself comfortable in a pair of Pete's favorite pajamas. Understand this, you have never heard snoring until you have had an elephant nap on your couch. Pete was a perfectly unpleased pig. Tomorrow, he thought, the big girl leaves. Pete awoke the next day to find Pickles doing a little morning Tai Chi, as if she were in China, which she certainly was not. On the other hand, Pete noted that his house guest had made a few changes to the grounds. This time, Pete did not say ridiculous. Later that morning, Pete experienced the goose-bumpily joy of a back scrubbing with his newspaper and coffee. He also discovered the limits of his bathtub. Don't put the elephant in the bathtub. Not a good fit, yeah. Pickles showed Pete a magazine article about high diving. She pointed to both of them. Ridiculous, Pete said. Pigs and elephants sink like bricks. Pickles smiled. After lunch, they would swan dive off Niagara Falls. And they did, sort of. On Tuesday, they sledded down the Matterhorn in Switzerland, sort of. Pete was learning that Pickles had lots of plans. On Sunday, they went to Tahiti for brunch. Pickles, as always, shared her tropical refreshment with the natives. After Paris, it was on to the lazy canals of Venice. Pete did not know any romantic Italian songs, which did not stop him from singing them. Pickles sniffed a fragrant Venetian lily and shared it with Pete in a manner nicely suited for elephants and pigs. How is he sharing that Venetian lily? It was when Pete returned home one evening and found ballet tryouts in Moscow, soaring paracows over Tuscany, and house painters on his roof that his thoughts turned to his earlier life. A less complicated life, thought Pete. Soon after, Pete discovered Pickles getting into things she shouldn't have been. He snapped. I am a predictable, practical, uncomplicated pig, or I was before, he yelled. As a shocked Pickles fell back into the bathtub, the last words she remembered hearing were the worst. It's probably time you left. Something broke. A pipe gushed water into a spewing torrent. The house filled with a panicky Pete screamed, Pickles, the mop, buckets, sponges, never mind, head up for high ground. Pete worried that the high ground would run out, and as a matter of fact, it did. And when all the snouts and snoots in the now flooded house were fully stretched to their furthest reach, only one had found the refuge of sweet air. Pete clung tightly to the last open window. He looked back down into the face of one far too heavy to join him and noticed once again, as always, a smile. At that terrible moment, what occurred to Pete was not how his life had become so unpredictable, so unpractical, and so completely complicated with Pickles. No, what occurred to Pete was his life without her. That endless night would be the longest of all their great journeys. And when the fireman finally climbed to the window the next morning, he could not believe what he found. You see it? He found a very small pig breathing for a very large elephant all night, every hour, every minute, every breath shared. When they finally emptied the house, the firemen looked down in puzzlement at the exhausted pair of sleeping friends. They tried but could not pull Pete from the mighty grasp of Pickles. The two slept all day, through the night, and on till morning, when they awoke to pick blueberries on the dandelion moons of Pluto. Pete sang Italian love songs. Thanks for letting me share that. And I think Elizabeth's going to sing a song with us now. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. That was so adorable. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Elizabeth, your choir director, and a little bit closer. Okay, how's that? So just to get us kind of going this morning, I found a really, really fun song about reading. So I'm hoping you all can help me in two ways. One is to help keep the beat. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But there's a chorus that's kind of we're going to learn it as a call and response. It just takes 30 seconds here. And then we'll put that chorus in. I'm going to speak the text and then we'll kind of sing that chorus together. So the words are, I love to read. I love to read. I love to read. We do that 3 times. I read every day. Oh, I love to read every day. And some days I don't get enough reading. So this song helps me remember that I love to read. So here's your part. Ready? I'll sing it and you sing it back. I love to read. I love to read. Ready? I love to read. I love to read. Here's the second half. I love to read. I read every day. Ready? I love to read. I read every day. Yeah, so that's the chorus. And there's some other words here that kind of set us up to help us just remember all the wonderful things that books can give to us, okay? So here's the part where we need to get the rhythm going. So very gently, just wherever you are, you can snap or clap along, maybe tap your foot, get that beat going. Okay, let's try the chorus all together. So remember, it's I love to read 3 times, and then I read every day. So ready? Here we go. I love to read. I love to read. I love to read. I read every day. Good, remember that because it's coming up. Can you keep the beat with me? Here we go. Reading, breathing in the life of the story. The storyteller takes me for a ride. Timeless stories spoken long ago. People and places I want to know. Here we go. I love to read. I love to read. I love to read. I read every day. Reading through another once upon a time. The storyteller tells us of their lives. Lives full of courage, lives with dreams and tears, stories I always want to hear. Here we go, chorus, and I love to read. I love to read. I love to read. I read every day. One more time. I love to read. I love to read. I love to read. I read every day. Yes, I hope you will enjoy reading every day. Thank you for listening and for sharing this song.
Isn't that nice? Thank you, everybody. Okay, so let me get my script up here again. Okay, we are a welcoming and caring congregation, and one way we show this is by honoring any joys or concerns, gratitudes or sorrows we carry in our hearts and spirits. You're welcome to come up, take a pebble and drop it into our community. Where? Oh, there. Drop it into our community water, and the ripples representing how what we share flows out and connects with others. If you are unable to come up, just give us a wave and we will bring the mic to you. And if you're fairly new to us, and if you'd like to, you're most welcome to share a little bit about who you are and what brings you here today. All we ask is that everyone know announcements, please. And while you speak from your heart, please be brief.
Oh, yes. Love, death, and the whole darn thing. I have two things to share today. One is a joy. My beloved husband's birthday is today. Happy birthday, Greg. The second one is a sorrow. I got a call from my cousin's husband yesterday and she died. She'd been quite ill, but it was still very sudden. And she was kind of our last family connection to Montana, so it's really hard.
Well, Debbie my name's Greg. Debbie kind of staged me. I was dropped the pebble, happy birthday to me. Thank you. And the second is a joy that Humboldt Electric, who we've contracted with, successfully installed our new battery backup system at our house this past week. So we are within several days of having complete battery backup for our house and everything else.
Good morning, I'm Chip. This first stone is appreciation again for Laurel, Sina, Susie, and Marshall, who joined us yesterday along with Beverly Morgan Lewis. And this is a stone of hope and concern for David Lewis, Beverly's husband, who is struggling with pneumonia and has been in ICU and receiving some serious treatments. And this last is a stone of appreciation for those people who come up here and refrain from making announcements. And to let you know, there are some paper white bulbs, narcissus bulbs, out in front of the foyer outside.
As some of you know, the senior center in Arcata and Eureka, and probably Fortuna as well, have opened up, and they are wonderful places served in a cafe way, and each table gets the chance to talk with each other around in a circle, knowing old friends. But there was a sad thing that happened this week. Even though we are very open to new ideas and getting around with each other, what happened was I opened up with song. And sadly to say, my song is not very good anymore. But I thought the enthusiasm was there, and maybe that made it. But it didn't. So whatever we can do, if you can join us in support of getting song into the senior center, it would be very much appreciated, because listening to people is what needs to happen. The other one is Ursula Osborne and Clyde. Did you want to come up, John?
Yes.
John knew Ursula and Clyde Osborne before they were here as members. Yes. But he missed their memoriam yesterday. As happens when you're older, you tend to forget things.
The kids are still here. I think. So I missed
That's a
that.
good idea, John.
And things like this happen because I don't care. Use the mic. Can you hear me through the cloth? I feel like I'm going through. Okay. This is kind of like retaliation day for something that happened that maybe was not okay in an eating place because it's a lunch and there's nothing else going on other than ping pong. Well, ping pong is important too. And so is singing. And so I have a little ditty for the kids who are now gone. And so I'm going to sing it out loud because it was a song that was banned by somebody in there. And this goes, ready?
Yes. Go ahead.
Down in the meadow in an itty bitty brook swam three little fishies in this mama fish too. Swim, said the mama, swim if you can. And she swam right over the dam. Boom, boom, did him that I want him a chew. A bum, bum, did him that I want him a chew. A boom, boom, did him that I want him a chew. And they swam right over the dam. Okay, so that was cut the end of it. And it was being sung by some people with this. We had a chorus of our own, and it was really bright. It was fast, and we should have been out of there, but we didn't. And so now it's banned because they don't have it. For some reason, they don't have it. And it hasn't been charted officially.
I think that possibly if the musician volunteered to come and lead a chorus, that who knows the words.
And I thought maybe damn was the bad word because I noticed the religious sector was in there sticking things up,
I know, we're going so long.
And so we have to take it off. Get out of here.
I'm Steve Davis. I'm the son of Ralph and Joanne Davis and the brother of Ruth Davis. And I'm so glad to have really good news for you folks. We have really good people working at our Crestwood Bridge, where my sister is really enjoying her continued rehabilitation and the privilege of all of you with your showers of love and prayers and kindness from the past and whatever we can do to encourage our communities to embrace those who may have lost or never had their best thinking yet, that they too will have kind people and healthy food and good sleep and medications that really do help bring about peace and good thinking. Thank you so much, dear friends. It's good to be back in your good company and hoping for better service too. Thank you.
Hi, I've got two pebbles today. For those of you who know me, I was going to Africa with my entire family, and to say the least, I was terrified. But surprisingly, maybe it was because it was a gift from my mom for us all to be there, that we all really behaved ourselves, and it was an actual enjoyable time. So that's one for that. The second one is when I came back, the kitchen remodel that I've been in process of doing for 2 years was finally done. So it was like I got to come back to this beautiful kitchen. So that was all exciting.
Okay, I'm Anna, technical coordinator, and I am going to read you the Zoom joys and sorrows. We have from Sina Marino. Thank you for all the folks that have been helping with the BLM demonstrations on Saturdays. And from Archie and Sue, thank you, Chip Sharp and Sina Marino, for your organizational leadership, bringing together the BLM and climate banners and earnest banner waivers for social witness in Eureka every Saturday morning. Marshall, thank you for my new job, still needing a place to live. We have to leave our current place Friday. Thankful for Sina for the hospitality she has shown us. And that's it for today. Thanks, guys.
Now we hold in all our care all that has been shared today and know that some things are so large and so fresh and fragile that tending to them inwardly seems best for now. So this is one last pebble for all things that have been unspoken and left in our hearts. And now we get to hear from the choir.
Sing loudly till the stars have moved, and join these on this boundless world. Our praises call us to explore, till sun shall rise and set no more. Ours be the poems of all tones, all things of loveliness and worth, all songs, one life, one beauty on the earth. From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace goodwill on earth be sung through every land, by every tongue.
That was gorgeous. Thank you, choir. So we approach the book sharing time as we open up into sharing the books that have inspired us this past year. I'd like to do something a little playful first, so get excited. As Stephen King has said, books are a uniquely portable magic. So before we get into sharing stories, what I would like to do is to just take a second and pause, take a few breaths, just think about what it feels like to be inspired by a book, or maybe tingling, just noticing the feeling of feeling inspired by a book. Okay. Now that you have that feeling, I'd like you to come up with a gesture for that feeling. It does not have to be anything crazy at all. It can be this, it can be this, it can be anything you could think of, okay? Right? Like whatever it is, okay? So now I'd like you to just take a minute or two, not a whole minute, actually, just a few moments to practice your gesture. I am seeing some great gestures out there. Zoom, I know you have great gestures too. Okay, so Zoom folks, what I want you to do is to turn your viewing to gallery, and you're going to share your gesture. As you share your gesture, I'd like you to look around at all the other squares and see the gestures that your community also has. In-person folks, what I'd like to do is split you guys down the middle, okay? So this side are going to be the gestures first. This side is going to be the witness. So what I would like this side to do is at the same time, show this side your gesture with full enthusiasm. You may, if you can stand, go ahead and stand, okay? And witnesses, just really take it in, okay? On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Lovely, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Yay! So great, okay. So now this side, I'd like you guys to do your gestures, and this side, I'd like you guys to deeply witness. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Ah, lovely. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Oh, round of applause for everyone. Thank you. Let's start sharing our book recommendations. If you've brought your book, please share a passage that is 1 page or less so that we have time to hear from a lot of folks. If you forgot your book or you didn't get the memo to bring a book, don't worry. Just think about the book that's impacted you the most and come up and share why it's impacted you about 2 minutes or less, okay? We will take turns sharing, much like we do for Joys and Sorrows. Please come up this way to the left. Take your mask off, speak into the microphone. Please keep your share to around 2 minutes so that everyone has time to share. And then you can mask back up and go back to your seat that way. We will take the first portion of time for in-person shares. And then once in-person shares are finished, we'll transition to Zoom folks. And Zoom folks, please raise your hand or comment in chat if you'd like to share so that we have an idea of how many will be participating. Once we transition to Zoom folks, you'll be highlighted in Zoom and projected here. Okay, so once again, about 2 minutes, come on up here, share, have a seat, and so we begin. Thank you.
Well, this is, the book is called From What Is to What If, and it's an amazing book, you know, tells lots of stories of what that question made. So what if? And I know you want me to read something, but I'd like to tell you a story that really made it happen. So and this has happened, this book is, he's from England, and there was this bus stop that was just all these buses coming in. It was all dirty and no fun. And they said, what if we can make this a park? Just maybe just for a day. And they did that. They put flower beds and benches and all this stuff, really changes, and the bus didn't stop there. And the people liked it so much. What if we just change this for forever? You know, it's just an amazing, amazing book. You know, that's just one story. But how it starts, it says, I wake, well rested in the straw-baled apartment my family and I call home. Built 15 years ago, part of a sustainable construction initiative throughout our city. The 3-story high apartment complex costs virtually nothing to heat. Its basement hosts composting units for all the building's toilets, and solar panels on the roof generate all our electricity needs. I wake my kids, get them dressed and fed, and accompany them to school. A walk that takes us through shared gardens with diversity of food crops, including young baby chard whose deep red leaves radiate like stained glass caught in the brilliant sun of this late spring morning. The streets are quiet due to sparse motorized traffic, and they are lined with fruit trees and nut trees in early blossom. The air smells of spring. Each bus stop we pass is surrounded by a garden on 3 sides, part of the edible bus stop network that now includes most bus stops across the United Kingdom. Anyone can graze while they wait for the bus.
Hi, is it on? Yeah, okay, I'm Ann. You may imagine that I'm bringing this up as a children's book because of the format. It looks like a kid's book, and in fact, they put it in the kids' book section of the library. But this is a how-to book, and I found it very inspiring. It's called Kamishibai Man, and Kamishibai is a way of storytelling that was developed in the 1930s in Japan from storytellers in the past. What they did in this case was to work out a way to have a little sort of theater, a set of painted cards on the back of a bicycle, and underneath would be a drawer, because the Kamishibai Man, this is the hard part, it's sugar. The Kamishibai Man would also sell sweets. But this story is about an elder who had been a Kamishibai Man. And well, then TV came and so forth, you know, and the children weren't as interested. But in this book, he his story is told. He's remembering what used to happen. And especially there was a little boy who would listen to the story, but then he would run away. He wouldn't buy sweets and he wouldn't let the Kamishibai man give him one. Well, so he's standing in the place where all this used to happen in the city. And now it's all different. But he's remembering out loud. And a voice cries out, "I was that boy." And there's a whole crowd of adults now. And so he goes back into business, essentially, because all of these people want this again. The grown-up people. Well, I looked at this and I thought, hey, I can do this. And of course, I found online that librarians have been doing this for some time, and people paint their own cards, or they can buy traditional Japanese sets of cards. And so, in fact, I'm planning to do this next year at the second annual Obon Festival, which we already plan will occur. The first annual was 2 weeks ago. And this helps me also because I had a Japanese stepmom for 26 years. I adored her. I met her when I was 24 and I was totally blown away. Wonderful person and very creative. And this helps me to get back in touch with that. And I'll be asking people between now and next year if you want to take part in it or help me with some aspect of it that I don't have perfect yet. So that is why this little book means so much to me. Thank you.
Fear not, I'm not planning to read from all three of these books, but I want to mention this past spring, I was reading 2 books at the same time, 1 or 2 chapters in one, and then I go to the other book. And they really meshed for me because they were recounting things that I had experienced in my life. One written by Bill Slaughter, who was in my high school graduation class, though I didn't know him, even though we occupied little spaces on the same page in the yearbook. His last name is Slaughter. My last name's Sharp. We had 500 kids in our graduating class. So when I saw on a Facebook post that he was a classmate of mine and he had published a book, Sit-ins, Drive-ins, and Uncle Sam, I was intrigued, got the book as quick as I could, started communicating with Bill, who now lives in Asheville, North Carolina, and we've shared some stories. He grew up in the Glenwood section of Greensboro, only about 1.5 miles from the Ashboro Street section of Greensboro that I was. Both were lower class or working class neighborhoods, all white. And his story of how he became aware of the division of the races and what was happening, and the research that he did to fill in a little bit more information about things that I had lived through was very much appreciated. So I have hopes of traveling to North Carolina and getting with Bill, and we'll walk through our old neighborhoods. The other book by Dave Hartsoe, Waging Peace. I first met Dave in 1969, I think it was, or 70. He was working for American Friends Service Committee, and I had a 2-year employment with them, training draft counselors. And he was a remarkable person at that time. He is now 82 years old, and he recounts his experience with getting arrested all around the world, with advocating for nonviolence, with taking the slow and steady route of engaging people in addressing nonviolence. And one part that I was reading as the Russians were invading Ukraine and the anti-Russian sentiment was building in this country was about his a tour he did with the AFSC youth group out on the streets in Moscow, and a crowd gathered. And he wrote, "What impressed me most was the tremendous pride the Russians had in their country, its beauty, its culture, its achievements. Just the day before, the cosmonaut Titov had circled the earth 17 times in Vostok 2. They wanted to know what we had to say about that. Police officers came up and tried to break up our discussion. But the people refused to leave and told them they had no right to interfere." So that image is so counter to a lot of what we are now thinking, and I remember we're thinking back in the 60s about Russia, really impressed me. And Dave was threatened with arrest in Moscow for standing out there with a sign calling for the end of nuclear weapons. And someone remarked to him, "You should go back to your country and hold that sign up." He says, "I have, there and in other countries too." He also tells about his mother. In 1959, his mother stood with others at Fort Detrick, Maryland, throughout the summer, hours every day. And she did this for 3 years at the gate, witnessing for the end of nuclear weapons, for peace. And they learned that all the employees and all the military personnel who drove through there had been instructed not to look at the protesters and to ignore them completely. And that's what the people who stood in vigil saw. Everyone drove past and gave them no mind. In the late 1960s, my parents were living in Salem, Oregon. My mom was perusing the shelves in a bookstore one day. A stranger approached her and asked, "Were you in that vigil at Fort Detrick about 10 years ago?" Flabbergasted, she said yes. And then he told her, "I just want you to know that I was working at Fort Detrick at that time. Because of you folks, I resigned my job." Yeah. So Dave mentioned frequently the book, A Force More Powerful. So I have both A Force More Powerful, which is the companion book to the TV series you may have seen, and also Waging Peace, that I'm glad to lend to people. And thank you. Tom's been giving me the victory symbol.
Hello. So my favorite book this year is If Women Rose Rooted by Sharon Blackie. She's really amazing. And I'm really interested in, like, how do we heal the world or get back to nature, like from a spiritual perspective? And this is the woman to read if you're interested in that. So I'm going to read a quick paragraph. At the bottom of a narrow green valley, I picked myself up and wandered through thickets of tall, tangled trees, stepping carefully over crumbling trunks festooned with ferns, along the overgrown fringes of a beautiful little river, which hardly seemed to be flowing at all. All at once, a string of pools opened up, one after another, shining and still like silver charms on an antique bracelet. I sat there on a warm, moss-covered rock in the eerie silence of the wood for an hour and a half, entranced and cross-legged, watching the light change as the sun played among the clouds and rays of sunlight skimmed across the surface of the water, spotlights searching for who knows what. Once I looked up to see a single crow gliding slowly past just above the water. Following her path with my eyes, I thought I saw a figure of a reclining stone giant in the shadows, hidden in the trees on the far side of the river. Old moss woman, soft green hair, staring eyes, and wide dark maw. So one of her big ideas is we need to bring enchantment back into the world to get in right relationship with the earth. So that was me participant hat. This is me facilitator hat. Let's try and keep it to 2 minutes. We're already at noon, and we'll switch to Zoom in about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Dana. I read this book last year. It was the first book I got from a thrift store when I got off the airplane from the Philippines and my pandemic lockdown. I got it for $1, but I've loved it. I'm reading it a second time. It's called The Way of the Saints, and there's just a different page for each saint, and it tells a little bit of their story. So these people were sort of an everyday person, if you can imagine. Anyway, so I like this character. His name's Saint Dominic of the Causeway. It would be helpful if we had a photograph of Dominic of the Causeway. His early life met with a series of rejections because of his uncouth appearance. He tried several times to join monastic communities, but they turned him down because he looked so slovenly. He was also thought to be somewhat stupid. It appears that this humble man from the Basque country of Spain had little going for him. So Dominic became a hermit, built his own cabin, and cultivated a flourishing garden in the wilderness around it. He lived there respectably for some time. When Saint Gregory of Ostia visited the area to preach, Dominic latched onto him and became his companion. Gregory, like the former, for Dominic that enhanced his life as he traveled with the preacher and saw something of the world. When Gregory died, however, Dominic was left to his own devices to make something of his life. I'll just stop here, but he was sort of considered a holy person by the end of his life, even though he was very simple and considered stupid. And this book for me is just a reminder that some of the wisest people that we meet in our lives are the most uneducated, and some of the most generous people we meet also have the least amount of money. And that's why I appreciate the writings on these people. Thanks.
Hello again. I'm Elizabeth. So I left my book sitting on the counter. Was running, doing things, but I couldn't not share it because, you know, sometimes being the parent of a small child, I read mostly children's books, and this book was given to us by Harrison's older sister, Kayla, which makes it all the more sweet. And it's actually an adaptation of an adult version of the book, How to Be a Good Creature, written by German naturalist and explorer Cy Montgomery. The kids' version is called Becoming a Good Creature, and it's just one of the most delightful stories that I've read, and I get to read it a lot because it only takes about 10 minutes. So I'll just read one excerpt to kind of give you a sense of what it's about, but the pictures are glorious and beautiful, and it's a wonderful journey. School is not the only place to find a teacher. Sometimes we meet teachers in the forest, or in the barn, or in the ocean, or right in our own house. Some of my teachers have had 2 legs, while others have had 4. Some have had scales, feathers, or horns, but all have taught me something important about how to be a good creature in the world. And the book again is Becoming a Good Creature by Cy Montgomery. Thank you.
I highly recommend the Holy Bible Book of the Philippians by Paul. And I especially appreciate the verses of Philippians 4, 5, 6, and 7 with 8, where it says, whatsoever things are true, lovely, good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Now, I also have to mention a booklet from the 1980s I've recently received that we have permission to cry. It's okay to cry when you're dealing with grief in many of its manifestations. However, I have to mention Michael Bolton's Beautiful World from the US Songwriters Contest, where after all we've been through, folks, we can make it a beautiful world. So if you will enlarge our book bringing celebration today to brand new songs or favorite songs and favorite words coming together that truly inspire us. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to be as quick as I can because I want people on Zoom to be heard. Also, if you brought a book today and you didn't get a chance to share, come to me after the service because I'm writing down everything and I'm going to share it with everyone. This is a book that you're not going to find in stores. I kind of cheated a little bit. I was trying to think of what book meant the most to me. And this is a book written by my grandfather. It's called The Descendants of Albert Finch Sr. And my grandfather used to go around to graveyards, and I always thought it was really strange. Like, why did he, wherever he traveled, he used to go to graveyards, and I'm like, what is this weirdo doing? But it turned out that he was tracing our genealogy, our family's genealogy. So this book is actually a list of descendants. And here's me as a little 8-year-old kid. I'm in the book too, isn't that special? And you can see where I get my good looks from, you know, with this gentleman right here, right? So how fun is it to be able to see pictures of your ancestors? But the little passage that I want to read today is a very interesting story that happened to my ancestor in 1858. So, okay. And I apologize, I'm going to use the word Indian, but as preferred is indigenous people, but for time, I'm just going to use the word Indian. So, on the last day of March in 1829, Alanson Finch, a 4-year-old of one son of Albert Finch, one of the pioneer settlers of Washington Township, was stolen by the Indians. The child, together with an elder brother, was returning from the sugar bush when one suggested to the other the idea of trying to see who would reach home first by separate routes. As soon as the elder child reached home safely and was anxiously interrogated by his mother as to the whereabouts of the younger brother, he told the circumstances of their separate journeys home and closed by saying that he had given his brother the shortest way and had anticipated finding him at home. The search was immediately instituted, and after many futile efforts to discover the lost one by his friends and neighbors, the alarm spread throughout the county, and the entire male portion of them turned out to a man and scoured the woods in every direction. But their charitable intentions and endeavors proved unavailing, and after many days they desisted. The child was never found. And thus the matter rests until the final moment when all secrets shall be made known and all mysteries solved. Many are apt to attribute the abduction to the fact that the Finch boys were supposed to have taken some Indian ponies. And in retaliations, the Indians were said to have taken the boy. So I just wanted to share that because that always meant something to me in all of my life. It's like, oh my gosh, like ancestors were taken by Indians.
So official Zoom representative. There are a few people who don't want to speak out loud on Zoom, so I'm just going to read for them quick before we switch to the projector. So we have from Stephen Satong, my books are 1177 BC by Eric Klein and The Fate of Rome by Kyle Harper. Both deal with how climate and the associated famine Migrations and disease led to the downfall of the late Bronze Age and Roman Empire, respectively. Very relevant to our time. And Marshall would like to share just a few quotes from Rumi that inspire him. What you seek is seeking you. Be like a tree and let the dead leaves drop. Yesterday, I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today, I am wise, so I'm changing myself. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. Do not feel lonely. The entire universe is inside you. Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. Set your life on fire. Your task is not to seek love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself you have built against it. Beauty surrounds us, but we usually need to be walking in a garden to know it. Okay, so now we will switch over and hear from those on Zoom who would like to speak. Well, you see them.
Very simply spoken, it is the angle at which you can still increase until the balance has been disturbed and the shingles will fall off. And roofing or a number of things like that, road grades are developed in the basis of the angle of repose. This book is the history of two families, one an artist, his wife, and him, a burgeoning engineer, anxious to plunge into the 1900s, developing and working in mines, building roads, figuring out water canals, and the difficulty that they both encounter with a very lack of money and machinery or a home without building it. And the conflicts that brings up for the artist, his wife, who becomes an illustrator for all the areas that they lived in the early West while they were developing these pioneering principles. The artist, his wife, solved that solution, found a solution for that, in that she became an illustrator, very, very famous for illustrating all of these kinds of activities as they developed in the West. And in the meantime, telling a tender story about the conflict of his wife, who preferred to live in more civilized climes, and the engineer who was always rolling on to the next challenge of development, and coming to a resolution at the end of their life. But what was consistent throughout the book is the reminder of this angle of repose, that there's only so far you can tilt up before you slide down. And it has been really useful to me when I'm taking on new projects or evaluating if I've done it or not done it enough, to check my angle of repose. And that's why this is one of my favorite books.
I found a book in about March or April from the libraries, the Eureka Libraries new books collection. It's called Keep Moving. It's by someone named Maggie Smith, which is not the Maggie Smith we all think of, but she is awesome. And it spoke to my heart of what I was going through. And the pages are very easy to get through. Every single page spoke to me. I photocopied a bunch of them, and I'm just going to share a few to let you know how they just went right to my heart and right what I'm going through. Try to shift your thinking away from loss and toward growth. Consider this difficult time a gap year between your last life and what might happen next. Think of it as the first messy, brave, hard, exhilarating year of your new life. Keep moving.
Another page. Stop waiting on some grand permission to change your life. The universe is not going to tell you it's okay. Tell yourself it's okay. Keep moving. And ask yourself about the kind of life you want. What would you do today, and with whom and where? Consider the life you have. Do one thing today, however small, to close the gap between the two. Keep moving. I liked that it had blue font and blue pages with black font every here and there. And it was just a simple piece to get. It carried me through splitting up with Jeff after standing on Wedding Rock with him almost 20 years ago, loving him 39 years. And he followed me out from Kansas City 7 years after I moved out here. I still have his elderly cat on my back porch. And we are still friends, but can't live together. But the keep moving really, really helped. Thank you
so much.
Communicate.
Hear me? Is it on? Should I? Hello? Okay. All right, we come to this fellowship because we love what exists here, especially when our services go long. It is a living entity, and like all living things, needs nurture and sustenance. Its breath and heartbeat, its life itself, is only derived from its living components, us. For those with us online, and we are glad you are here, there is a slide that provides options for how to contribute to the fellowship's financial health. For those here, we shall be passing a basket. Also, that if you have Venmo, you can use the QR code on your phone to scan the code on your order of service to donate. We accept cash and checks into the basket as well. Please make the checks out to HUUF. And again, please drop those as you depart. As an opportunity to practice the spiritual art of generosity, this morning's offering will now be gratefully received as Annette Grenay-Hull blesses us with music. Take it away, Annette.
Thank you, Annette. Where are we? Thank you for deep and thoughtful sharing of inspiration. We will now transition to extinguishing the chalice. Thank you. In the words of Vera Nazarian, a Russian-American science fiction author, whenever you read a good book, somewhere in the world, a door opens to allow in more light. Go in peace, walk in love, and be a light into the world. Shalom, salam alaikum, blessed be, ashe, aho, and amen. Go from here in peace.